It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. Which just about sums up your life if you own a cheap Jaguar. Dang it. Hi, I'm Bob Knote, and I'm a unicorn hunter. And that unicorn is a Jaguar XJS that costs $2,000 or less, that with a little bit of fiddling can actually turn out to be a decent vehicle. It could happen. It's never happened to me, but I've heard the legends. Now, if you're going to get into this unicorn hunting game, you got to go in with your eyes wide open. You got to acknowledge the fact that you actually might be disappointed. And a really good case in point is Old Tex here. Now, Old Tex is a car that I bought 4 years ago out of a backyard in northern Texas. Saw it advertised on Facebook Marketplace and offered the guy $500 and took it more for the fact that I really needed to get the heck out of the shop for a couple of days than actually needing a parts car, which it looked like it actually was going to be. And got down there, and it was actually a really solid car, and it was complete. So at the very least, this is going to be a good parts car. But the story was that the thing just quit running, and it just sat since 2014. And you know what? I got to thinking, maybe this could actually turn out to be a decent runner. So what I did was spent the next year or so trying to get this thing running. Tony and I went around the bend with this car. It had electrical issues, and when we finally got it running, turns out that the thing had a rod knock. A bad one. So at that point, I decided to undertake the $100 Jaguar V12 overhaul challenge and build an engine for this thing. And those of you that have been following the channel, you understand that because of electrical issues, we couldn't get the engine started, and we ended up locking it up because there just wasn't enough oil pressure. Even though I was infusing it with oil, there wasn't enough oil pressure to keep it from locking up. So I then put a $150 engine into it, spent a little money on it, not much. Probably $350 by the time I got done with the engine, put it in, and it ran like a train. In fact, we eventually got to the point where we took this vehicle up Pikes Peak, and I drove it out from Minnesota to California and back over Christmas. And it ran flawlessly, with the exception of the fact that the climate control system stopped working and it just about froze to death. It's at 1 degree Fahrenheit outside, and it's getting cold in here. So it sounds like a success story, and it was for me, but here's the thing. If you buy one of these cars and it's got this kind of issues and you have a shop do it, at my shop rate, I'd have had $50,000 in this car. And the only reason that it's not crushed at this point is the fact that I started the project on YouTube, and you can't have your first YouTube project fail. So you had to go for it. And I just about drove myself nuts that summer, but we did make it to Pikes Peak. Not only to Pikes Peak, but the top and back. That was a pretty awesome day. Which then brings us to the subject of this 1990 Jaguar XJS convertible that I brought onto the property last fall. And this is a vehicle that I found on, I believe it was Craigslist, for $750, $1,000 delivered from about 200 miles away, which I thought was worth the money. And the thing about this car was that it looked solid, and really it does. There's nothing on the exterior of this vehicle that would indicate that there is any rust issues whatsoever. And the fact that The owner of the car said that it fires but won't run. Again, kind of sucked me in. Maybe this thing could be made to work. Well, here's the issue. Got the thing home here, and while it looked really solid on the outside, once I pulled the interior apart, I mean, it is the weirdest thing in the world. The interior of this thing is rusted out. And everything under the dash is rusty. It's as if the top of the vehicle wasn't sealed properly. It could absolutely be restored. Absolutely. But the question is, how much would these vehicles have to appreciate in order for us to go through all of the trouble to repair the rust? And I haven't even got the fuel tank out yet. I haven't even looked underneath the car, although the jack points look to be pretty solid. So at this point, this car, it actually hasn't been a disappointment, because this is a vehicle that we used as a road map for the 1990 black convertible project that we're doing right now. Tony and I have been around the bend with these cars as far as coupes are concerned, but we've never really had much to do with convertible tops, although Tony was a Ford technician for years and he's familiar with how those tops go on. This has been real helpful in that, and also has been a really good parts car in that project. There's a lot in this car, and who knows, maybe it could be resurrected, but it won't be anytime soon. And now we have the Survivor 85er. This is a car that I picked up, again, for $1,000 2 or 3 years ago with the intention of putting an engine in it, and it still could happen. This is clearly not a unicorn, but it is too good a car to actually use for parts. And the interior is what I bought the vehicle for initially, to put in old techs, which might happen still if I can actually get to the project here. The wood's great, trunk is real clean, although you couldn't tell by the big bin of parts in the back here. The mice are starting to get at it, so something needs to be done here pretty soon. The story here is that a gentleman came down with cancer, prostate cancer, and the par had been apart for 10 years, 12 years, and what he wanted to do was sell the car so he could purchase a fishing boat, so he could just sort of enjoy whatever time he had left, regardless of whether he kicked cancer or not. So I bought the vehicle. The intent was to get an engine in it so he could take one last ride in it, but that really didn't pan out because of COVID and my own cancer situation. So you really can't tell what's going to happen. So you better get after it while you can. And last but not least, we have this red Rouge Edition potential unicorn. And again, I found this one on, well, actually this one was Facebook Marketplace. And it was a vehicle that had been, that's a long story, we'll get into it later. But bottom line was, this car was going to get crushed unless I bought it, and at the very least, this was going to be a really good parts car. Solid body, again. Really nice interior, which was kind of the hook for me because I need an interior for my convertible. Door cards are different, but we can fix that. Wood's reasonably good, not great. But, so what is this thing doing in a boneyard? Waiting to be crushed? Well, the guy that owned the car, I think he had a stroke or died, or whatever reason, the kids were emptying out his property, getting it ready to sell. Now the car had two things missing that were really important. First of all, keys, so you can actually work with the car, and a title, which you actually want to drive it, you got to deal with. Bought it, brought it home, and started working with it. Now, if this car runs, it's a project car for somebody. If not, it's parts. Now, what the next 4 videos are going to be is me not only trying to get this car started and running, but also this car. Now, this is not a unicorn. This car actually cost me about $3,000 to buy. It's a 1990 XJS convertible. Again, it's one of the stars of our show, the first couple of years where we fixed this thing, got it going reasonably reliably, and took it to the Black Hills of South Dakota, Tony and I. And I've got another $1,500 in tires and water pump and things like that, brakes. And so it's not what I would consider the unicorn, but it is a relatively inexpensive car that has actually turned out pretty well. It's got 150,000 miles on it, and during the summer, I drive it just about every day. Now, the issue with this car is that it's got the Marelli curse going on. And I'm not sure exactly what it is, but half the engine doesn't run. And so what I got to do is not only see if we can get the red one going, but the convertible running on all 12 as well. And that's where the title, Tale of Two Kitties, comes from. So there it is. I've got my marching orders for the next 4 episodes, and it ought to be interesting, if not entertaining. So if you like these videos, like, subscribe, and maybe leave a comment down below so we can know what we can do better. And we'll see you the next time on the Camp Chaos Chronicle.